Developing sports news tonight, a major shakeup coming to the Blackhawks organization after Chicago announces the firing of its head coach, Luke Richardson.
With the move comes big changes to the IceHogs as well. WYFR sports director Eric Graver joins us with the latest.
Yeah, guys, a pretty crazy development here. After just 8 wins in their first 26 games, the Blackhawks decided it was time to make a change. And now with Luke Richardson out of the picture, IceHogs head coach Anders Sorensen will take over as the Hawks' interim head coach the rest of the way. Sorensen takes over the role after the past 6 seasons behind the Rockford bench. He first joined the Blackhawks back in 2013 as a development coach before becoming an IceHogs assistant coach back in 2018. He was an interim head coach for the Hogs as well in 2021 before later earning the head coaching job and won 117 games as their man in charge. Assistant general manager Mark Eaton takes over as the interim head coach in Rockford, and he has spent the last 11 seasons with the organization. Sorensen will make his head coaching debut at the NHL level this Saturday at the United Center when the Hawks play host to the Jets, while the IceHogs will play in Hartford tomorrow night.
Thank you, Eric. And Eaton again will make his coaching debut at the BMO later this month when the IceHogs host the Wild on Saturday, December 14th.